You don't forget a sound like that. Not if you've heard it the way I did, deep in the bones of the night, where even the air feels afraid to move. It was a voice, maybe, or the lake pretending to have one. I can't tell anymore. They told me not to talk about it, not to record this. Said the investigation was closed and the lake takes what it takes. But I can't sleep without hearing it, so I'll say it out loud one last time. If you're listening to this, promise me something. If you ever find yourself working the Great Lakes alone in late October, when the wind comes cold off the water, don't answer the radio. My name is Eli Turner, Park Ranger, Station 12, Lake Superior North Boundary. Last season was supposed to be my final rotation before winter shutdown. 2 weeks of solitude, logging data, checking cabins, locking up docks. Simple. That's what they told me. I arrived just before sundown. The drive up was quiet, too quiet. The highway curled through pine forests that looked older than time, the kind that swallow your headlights and don't give them back. By the time I reached the outpost, the sky was the color of wet ash. There it was, the ranger station. Wood siding warped from wind, windows fogged over from inside. The flag out front was half torn, snapping weakly in the cold breeze. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt like it was waiting. The key was supposed to be under the mat. It wasn't. When I finally forced the door open, the smell hit me, damp, metallic, like rainwater in old copper. Everything was still, desk lamp flickering, logbook half open, pages curling at the edges. I brushed my gloves clean and flipped through the entries. Donnelly's handwriting. The ranger I was replacing. The last entry was dated 4 nights before. He called my name again, out past the dock. Then a line scratched so hard it tore the paper. It's not real. I thought maybe he'd just left, walked out, got lost. That's what they told the locals when he vanished, that he went out in bad weather and never came back. But as I stood there, I noticed something strange. The clock on the wall. It was still ticking, but the hands hadn't moved in hours. 2:47 a.m. The second hand shivered, but it never advanced. Like time itself was stuck there. I tried the radio next, routine check. Static mostly. Then a burst of white noise, and through it, Eli Turner, Station 12, requesting assistance. My name. My voice. I froze. The mic was still in my hand, but I hadn't said a word. I killed the signal and sat back, heart pounding. Maybe a recording had been left in the frequency, maybe a malfunction, but it didn't sound like playback, it sounded live. Outside, the lake stretched black and endless. The moonlight hit the surface in shivers, like something moving beneath it. I told myself it was just waves, not real. Real, not real. That's what you do out there. You rationalize every impossible thing until it sounds normal enough to survive the night. I went to bed near dawn, couldn't sleep. The walls seemed to breathe. Every few minutes the wood would pop or something would shift just beyond hearing. Old cabins make noise, I told myself. The wind makes noise. Then 3 sharp knocks on the window. I turned so fast the chair fell. No one there, just frost. And through it, a single wet handprint on the glass. When I went outside with my flashlight, I found footprints leading from the dock to the window. Bare footprints. The kind that should have frozen in seconds. They led back toward the shoreline, but at the water's edge, they stopped. The next morning, the sky was a dull gray. No wind, no birds, just stillness. I checked the logs again, trying to focus on work, but every so often I'd look up from the desk and think I saw movement across the lake, like someone walking out there, knee-deep in the fog. When I blinked, it was gone. I told myself it was mist, just the light playing tricks. But then, right before the sun set, the radio came alive again. Eli. Soft, distant, like my own voice coming from underwater. I didn't respond, didn't breathe. Then, come back. The voice faded, leaving nothing but a steady hiss. I shut the radio off and sat in the dark, staring at the window until my eyes blurred. That's when I saw it again. A figure standing on the dock, perfectly still. The beam of my flashlight caught its outline. Tall, barefoot, dripping. It didn't move, didn't run. It just lifted one arm and waved. I dropped the light. When I picked it up again, the dock was empty. Wind faint under static. The next entry in the logbook, the one I wrote that night, was short. He called my name. The water was still. I signed it, closed the book, and told myself I'd finish the season and leave. But deep down, I think I knew. You don't leave this place. Not really. You stay. You wait. And eventually, the lake calls you by name. Not real. Real. Not real. When I first arrived at Station 12, the lake was already turning to steel. The surface froze and thawed in long silver veins that creaked like old bones when the wind shifted. The kind of cold that carries sound too far and makes you imagine voices in the trees. I'd been on ranger duty up north before. Quiet stations, long patrols, endless paperwork. But there was something different about the Great Lakes. You can feel the depth of them under your feet, even when you're miles inland. They don't behave like normal water. They remember. Inside the outpost, the walls seemed to hum faintly, the kind of vibration you get from wind pushing against wood, except there was no wind then. The radio on the desk crackled once, then went dead. I unpacked slowly, trying to ground myself. Notebook, maps, thermos, my whole world shrinking to that little cabin. 4 walls, a cot, and a window facing an endless black mirror of a lake. The manual said to log every environmental change: temperature, wind direction, wave patterns. I did. For the first few hours, I tried to act like this was just another assignment. But the silence wasn't natural. It wasn't the quiet of wilderness. It was the kind of quiet that listens back. I walked down to the dock before dusk. The boards groaned beneath me, slick with frost. I could see my reflection trembling in the water, distorted, stretched. For a moment, it looked like something else was moving under me, a shape, pale, drifting just below the surface. When I blinked, it was gone. That's when I found the first sign that something wasn't right. Nails along the dock had been pried up, long scratches dragged across the wood like something had clawed its way onto shore. Not animal marks, too wide, too deliberate. I told myself ice does strange things when it breaks. Wind can carve patterns. Always find the logic. But the truth is, logic doesn't work up here. The lake doesn't care about reason, it rewrites it. As the sun fell, the water darkened into one solid color, like ink. The horizon disappeared, and somewhere in that darkness, I thought I heard a voice. Just one syllable. My name. Eli. I turned, expecting Donnelly, then remembered Donnelly was gone. Back inside, I lit the oil lamp. The station logs sat waiting on the desk, pages curling from moisture. The last entries were older than they should have been. Days missing. Dates that didn't match the calendar. One line repeated across several pages. He's not gone. And another, do not look at your reflection after midnight. I laughed a little under my breath. Folklore. Maybe Donnelly was losing it before he vanished. Cabin fever does strange things to people. Still, I avoided the mirror that night. Can't say why. The radio sputtered again around 2 a.m. A low hum, like something turning in static. Then, Station 12, report in. Protocol said I should respond, so I pressed the button. This is Turner. All quiet. Short pause, static reply. Quiet. Yes. All quiet. It repeated me, syllable for syllable, in my voice. I let go of the mic, didn't answer again. When morning came, frost coated the windows so thick I couldn't see through them. I opened the door, and a strange thing happened. The frost on the outside melted instantly, though the air was still below freezing. That's when I saw the footprints again. Bare feet, pressed into snow. They led from the forest to the dock and back to the door, stopped right at the threshold like whoever or whatever it was had been standing there, waiting. Inside, the temperature had dropped. My breath hung in front of me. I checked the heater, it was fine. Checked the windows, all sealed. The cold wasn't from outside. It came from the floorboards. I dropped to one knee, put my hand down. It was damp, cold as lake water. Something was seeping up through the cracks. That's when the whisper came again. Close. So close it felt like it crawled across the back of my neck. Not real. Real. Not real. I stood up so fast I knocked over the lamp. The light went out. For a long time I just stood there in the dark listening to the building breathe around me. Every creak sounded like footsteps moving across the ceiling. Every gust of air through the vents sounded like a sigh. Eventually I sat back down at the desk, trying to write the first official log entry of the season. My pen barely worked, ink frozen stiff. Arrived 1800 hours, no wildlife activity. Environmental readings stable, station operational. Then I hesitated, pen hovering above the page, and added one more line without thinking. The lake is awake. I didn't remember writing that, didn't remember thinking it either, but there it was. My handwriting. I stared at the words until the letters started to blur, until I thought I saw them move. When I looked back out the window, something stood at the edge of the dock again. Same outline as before, still as death. The lamp flickered once, twice, and in that momentary light, I saw the figure's reflection beneath it. Only the reflection moved. I turned away and closed my eyes. If I didn't look, maybe it would vanish. Maybe it wasn't real. Not real. Real. Not real. But when I opened them again, the window was clear. No frost. No figure. Just one wet handprint sliding slowly down the glass. I sat there until dawn, watching it fade. And for the first time since I'd arrived, I realized the old man in town was right. You don't stay near the dock after sundown. The lake keeps what it takes. By the third night, I stopped pretending it was all in my head. Sleep didn't come anymore, it just Hovered. That half-state where every creak of wood and every shift of wind sounds like a voice whispering your name. I started keeping the lamp burning just to break the dark. The light made the room feel smaller but somehow safer, like the shadows couldn't reach me if I could see them coming. Still, the shadows kept moving. I kept telling myself it was the wind or the lake adjusting its ice, but every explanation was another lie, and I could feel it, like the station itself knew I was lying. I wrote in my logbook again, mechanical, just to fill the silence. Day 3. Temperature, -5. Visibility, low. Heard voices again. Not real. Real. Not real. The radio stayed off that night. I didn't want to hear it. But at exactly 2:47 a.m., the same time every clock in that place seemed to favor, it came alive on its own. Eli Turner, Station 12, requesting assistance. Same tone, same cadence. My voice. But this time there was something else underneath, like breathing. Slow, heavy, wet. I reached out and unplugged the radio. The static didn't stop. It just got quieter. I pressed my palms against my ears and waited for silence. When I opened my eyes, the lamp was flickering. The temperature dropped so fast that frost formed along the inside of the windows. And then, 3 knocks. Not on the glass this time. From the door. I froze. My hand hovered near the latch, but I couldn't make myself move. Another 3 knocks. Slower. Heavier. I finally whispered, "Who's there?" The answer came not through the door, not through the walls, but from inside the room. Eli. It sounded like it came from behind me, low and close to my ear. I turned so fast I tripped over the chair, hitting the floor hard. The lamp shattered, glass and oil spread across the boards. The room went dark except for the weak glow from the radio. Something moved in that glow, a figure just at the edge of sight. Not solid, not smoke, more like water taking shape. It stepped once. The floor didn't creak. Another step, and I could see its face. It was mine. I crawled backward until my hands hit the wall. The thing tilted its head the same way I did, like a mirror catching up to a reflection. When it opened its mouth, the sound that came out wasn't a voice. It was the sound of waves slapping against wood. Steady, rhythmic. Come back. I don't remember grabbing the flashlight, but I did. When the beam cut across the room, the figure vanished, like it had never been there. Only the puddle of oil remained, reflecting the light in thin ripples. That's when I realized the ripples were still moving. I leaned closer, flashlight trembling in my hand. And in that black reflection, I saw faces, dozens of them, floating just beneath the surface, eyes open, mouths moving soundlessly. My breath fogged the air. The reflection fogged back. Then a single voice rose from beneath it all, calm, almost kind. "You're one of us now." I staggered away, hit the wall hard enough to knock the breath out of me. My head rang, everything blurred. When I came to, the room was empty again. The lamp was gone. No shards, no oil, no puddle. The floor was dry. But the radio, it was on again. Eli Turner, coordinates 46 degrees north. Return. The voice sounded clearer this time. Human. Warm. And that's what made it worse. Because the coordinates, it was calling me inland, toward the old ranger post, the one closed after Donnelly disappeared. I stared at the numbers written across my notebook, pen shaking in my hand. I knew that post. 10 miles through dense forest. No road, no path. Still, something in that voice, something familiar, pulled at me. I packed a flashlight, a compass, and the old revolver we kept for emergencies. When I stepped outside, the air was still, the sky heavy with snow, the lake silent, stretched flat as glass. And as I crossed the first tree line, I swear I heard it, faintly, drifting from the dock behind me. Come back. The trees grew thicker the deeper I went. The sound of the wind faded until it felt like the forest was swallowing everything. Every few minutes, I'd stop, thinking I heard footsteps behind me. Each time there was nothing. Hours passed. Then I saw it, a clearing up ahead, faint smoke rising above it. An old structure leaned against a slope, half-buried, roof sagging, windows broken. The missing outpost. I approached carefully, the snow crunching like bones underfoot. The door was nailed shut, but the nails were old, rusted. One kick and they gave. Inside smelled like rot and earth and something wet. The kind of wet that doesn't come from rain. A single lantern sat on a table, flame still burning. Next to it, a logbook. Every page was the same sentence, written in shaky, uneven script. It doesn't drown. It waits, over and over, hundreds of times. I flipped to the last page. Fresh ink. He's here. Then. I heard something behind me. A slow, deliberate footstep. I turned, expecting to see nothing, but there was someone in the doorway. Tall, still. Donnelly. At least, what used to be him. His eyes were open wide, black water running down his face, dripping onto the floor. When he spoke, his voice was thick and slow, like each word came through the lake itself. You heard it too. My throat went dry. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. He took one step forward, the floor moaning under his weight. It doesn't drown. Another step. It waits. Then he smiled, and the lantern went out. When I woke, the cabin was empty again. No footprints. No Donnelly. The journal was gone. Only the smell of lake water remained. I stumbled outside, gasping, snow falling thick around me. I looked back once, and the cabin wasn't there. Just trees, and the faint sound of waves miles from shore. Not real. Real. Not real. The hike back to Station 12 took most of the night. I didn't remember walking half of it. My body moved on instinct, following the faint reflection of the lake through the trees. By the time I saw the outpost lights again, the sun was rising pale and colorless, and my compass needle spun uselessly in every direction. The world didn't feel right anymore. The air was too still, too quiet. Even the birds had stopped. When I stepped back inside, the station smelled different. The metallic dampness had deepened, stronger now, sharp and cold, like iron soaked in rain. The radio sat in the middle of the desk, cord wrapped neatly in a circle. I hadn't left it like that. The logbook was open again. The last page I'd written, the one about the coordinates, was gone, torn clean out. In its place, one new line, written in smaller, neater handwriting. We heard you. My chest tightened. I flipped through every page, but they were all blank. Every note, every entry I'd made since arriving, gone. faint heartbeat under static. I lit a cigarette, even though I'd quit years ago. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I needed to think, needed to remind myself that reality still had rules. I pulled the old topographical map from the drawer and circled the area where the abandoned cabin had been, or should have been. But there was nothing there. Not even the terrain matched what I'd seen. No coordinates, no structures, just unbroken forest. Something clicked deep in my memory, the voices I'd heard through the radio, the ones calling coordinates. What if they weren't talking to me? What if they were recordings of people who'd gone missing? That would explain the mimicry, the perfect imitation of voice. Wouldn't it? I told myself I'd go back out in daylight, retrace my steps, collect real evidence, photographs, samples, anything physical. If I could prove it wasn't all in my head, I could leave this place without feeling like I'd gone mad. But before I could pack, something flickered at the edge of my vision. A shadow moved across the far wall. Slow, deliberate. I turned, flashlight trembling. Nothing. Then a faint sound, like someone dragging their fingers along the outside wall. The sound circled the cabin once, twice, then stopped right outside the door. 3 knocks. I didn't move, didn't breathe. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the wind held its breath. Then, Eli whispered. Close. My name rolled through the air like fog. Open the door. I wanted to shout, to demand who it was, but my voice caught in my throat. I grabbed the revolver from the drawer, took 1 step toward the door, and stopped. Because I could see the doorknob turning, slowly, steadily, on its own. I backed away. The knob turned once, twice, then stopped halfway. And then, laughter. Quiet. Soft. A nervous, broken sound. My own. When I finally found the courage to look through the peephole, what I saw made no sense. The dock, the lake, moonlight breaking through clouds, and at the very edge of the dock, myself, standing there, still. I blinked once. The figure blinked back, a fraction too late. It raised 1 arm, pointing toward the trees behind me. Then its mouth moved. No sound came out, but I could read the shape of the words. Behind you. I turned fast, light sweeping across the cabin, empty, no one there. But when I looked back through the peephole, the dock was empty too. The reflection on the glass lingered a heartbeat longer. Then it smiled. By morning, I convinced myself it was fatigue, hallucination brought on by cold, isolation, sleep deprivation. I wrote everything down, every detail, to prove I was still rational. I decided to hike to the observation ridge. If the abandoned cabin truly wasn't there, I could see that from above. Maybe even catch the station's radio tower and re-establish a signal. It took most of the day to reach the ridge. The forest changed as I climbed. Trees taller, older, their trunks scarred by watermarks far above where any flood should reach. It felt like walking through the memory of an ocean. At the top, the view stretched wide. Miles of forest, the vast mirror of Lake Superior catching what little light remained. But the lake wasn't calm. Even from here I could see movement just below the surface, circles, slow and deliberate, like something turning over and over beneath the ice. That's when I saw them, figures, dozens of them, standing waist-deep in the shallows near the far shoreline, still. They weren't boats or rocks or shadows. They were people. I lifted my binoculars, breath fogging the lenses. Every figure was facing the same direction toward my station, and one of them, raised its arm, waving. Not fast, not frantic, just a slow, patient motion, as if it knew I was watching. The radio on my belt came alive then, crackling sharp through static. "Station 12, you see us?" My throat went dry. I didn't press the button, but the voice continued anyway. "We see you." Then silence. I stared down at the water until the last of the daylight disappeared. When I finally looked away, I realized something terrifying. The reflection of the lake had changed. Where my shadow should have been, there was another, taller, closer, and it was moving, even when I wasn't. I ran all the way back to the outpost. By the time I arrived, the night had swallowed everything. I locked the door behind me, bolted the windows, shut the radio off. But I could still hear it, the faint hum under the floorboards, like the lake was breathing beneath the cabin. I don't know how long I sat there. Minutes, hours. Time didn't work right anymore. And when I finally looked up, the window wasn't reflecting the inside of the cabin. It was showing the dock, the moonlight, and me standing there again, waiting. Not real. Real. Not real. Wind pressing a glass. Sometimes I could almost see them, like cracks running through the air itself. The line between sound and silence blurred, between waking and sleep, between here and there. I started writing everything down, over and over, afraid the words would vanish like they had before. But even the ink began to fade as soon as it dried. My last few log entries read, "Woke to water sounds beneath the cabin. Windows show movement that isn't mine." Hearing the lake whisper again. "Not real, real, not real." The radio hissed softly beside me, though I'd unplugged it days ago. I didn't dare touch it anymore. Every time I did, it would say my name, not as a call, but as a statement. "Eli, you're here. And once, you never left." The dripping wouldn't stop. It came from the walls now, each drop heavy, deliberate, as if something above me was breathing through the wood. I pressed my ear to the boards one night and heard movement, a slow dragging, like someone crawling inside the walls. I shouted, pounded the wall with my fist. The movement stopped. Then came 3 soft knocks from inside the wall. My flashlight flickered, battery draining faster than it should have. The beam caught the corner of the logbook on the desk. Pages fluttering through the air was still. Words began to appear in the open page, faint at first, then darker, bolder. "Do you see it now?" I dropped the light. Something about the cabin changed after that night. Distances didn't make sense. The window looked too far away. The floor seemed to slope downward as if the whole building leaned toward the lake. When I stepped outside, the air shimmered. The trees looked wet, though no rain had fallen. Their bark glistened, black and reflective. And the lake was breathing again. Every few seconds a pulse moved across the surface, soft, like an underwater heartbeat. Each wave reached the shore and stopped exactly at my boots, no further. I whispered, "I know you're there." The lake whispered back, "Then come closer." I took one step forward. The ice at the edge didn't crack. It shifted away, opening. For the first time I saw what was beneath. Shapes, half-formed, Faces turned upward, eyes wide open, mouths moving, slow and patient, as if singing to me. Not drowning, not struggling, just waiting. I staggered back, slipping on the frost. My radio hit the dock hard and switched on. "Station 12, reporting calm waters." My voice, but older, worn out like something speaking through memory. "Visibility clear, morning patrol complete." I whispered, "Stop." The voice continued. "No wildlife sighted. Lake stable, no movement on the ridge." Then silence. "It's good to be home." I threw the radio into the lake. It didn't splash. It just sank, soundless, like the water swallowed it before it hit the surface. When I turned back toward the cabin, I saw movement in the window. Someone inside, a silhouette pacing. It was holding a flashlight, just like mine. The beam flicked across the glass once, twice. Then it pointed directly at me. I backed away, step by step. The reflection didn't move. And then, its mouth opened. Through the glass, through the dark, through everything that separates living from not. "You should have stayed inside." The world snapped. For a few moments or hours, I didn't exist. Only light, noise, water, and memory. When I came to, the cabin looked different. Walls warped, furniture gone. The place felt older, as if decades had passed while I blinked. On the table sat a new radio. Brand new, still humming. "Station 12, Eli Turner reporting in." My own voice. I reached for the power switch, but the dials were gone. No buttons, no wiring. Just a smooth metal face cold under my fingers. And then, the air behind me shifted. The smell of lake water and rot filled the room. I turned slowly. There were two of me now, standing face to face. One was drenched, pale. The other, me, still breathing. He tilted his head, the same mirrored motion I'd seen before. "It doesn't drown." He stepped closer. "It waits." My flashlight went out. Only wind and breath remained. For a long time there was nothing but blackness, and in that blackness a single truth pressed itself into my mind, clear and cold. The lake didn't take people, it replaced them. Every ranger, every lost voice on the radio, every shadow reflection, they were all still here. Echoes, watching the next one arrive. Watching me. I tried to leave that night, packed the truck, turned the ignition. The road out of the forest was gone, only water. Miles of still, endless silver water where the road should have been. And out there, floating lights, flickering like lanterns beneath the surface. One by one they began to move toward shore. Not real, real, not real. By the time the storm rolled in, the world no longer made sense. The air itself felt heavy, bending the light, warping the space inside the station. The walls seemed to breathe, slow, damp inhalations that made the lamps flicker in rhythm. The storm shouldn't have been possible. No forecast, no warning, no cloud buildup. It just appeared, like the lake had decided to move upward and wear the sky. Water seeped through the floorboards again, not leaking this time, rising. I tried to block it, stacking supplies by the door, but the water slid through every crack like it had purpose. When I touched it, it wasn't cold. It felt alive, Each ripple along the boards made the same pulse, steady, matching my heartbeat. I stood still, afraid to move as the lamp flickered lower. The wind outside turned into a sound I'd heard before. Not wind, whispers. It doesn't drown. It waits. Come back. My knees buckled. I dropped the flashlight. The beam rolled across the floor, catching movement in the corner, reflections rippling upward, as though the floor were a pond and something was surfacing beneath it. Faces pressed against the boards from below, distorted, grinning, their eyes opened wide, watching me. One by one, hands began pushing up through the seams of the wood, thin, pale, glistening with dark water. I stumbled back, breath ragged. The radio hissed alive again. "Station 12, reporting calm waters." My voice, calm, reassuring, over and over. Calm waters. Calm waters. Each repetition slower, wetter, until the words drowned in static. The hands withdrew. The faces disappeared. And then silence. Faint wind through cracks. I thought maybe it was over. Maybe the storm had passed. But when I looked out the window, the world was gone. The trees, the dock, the shoreline. All gone. Only the lake remained, endless in every direction, silver black under a lightning sky. The cabin floated on it now, drifting slowly. The sound of water slapping the walls was steady, rhythmic. I stepped closer to the window. The reflection met me halfway. It smiled and whispered, "You're home." The floor tilted sharply, throwing me to the ground. The furniture slid, colliding with the walls. The lamp shattered. Darkness again. Water poured from the ceiling, seeping down the walls, pooling around my legs. Every droplet whispered something as it fell. Words, phrases. My own voice repeated in fragments. I should have burned the tapes. Don't answer the radio. Not real. Real. Not real. I pressed my hands to my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't outside, it was inside. Inside the air. Inside me. Like deep underwater pressure. I crawled toward the door. The handle was cold, slick with condensation. When I turned it, the door opened to black water. No dock, no land, just the lake. And standing on it, Donnelly. He was smiling again, the same patient, gentle smile I'd seen in the reflection. He raised his hand in greeting. "You heard it too?" His voice was calm, reverent, like he was describing a god. "It doesn't drown, Eli. It waits. It remembers." Lightning flashed behind him. For a second, I saw others standing on the water around him, rangers, hikers, faces I didn't recognize, all staring at me. "Come back!" They said it together, in unison, like a chant. Their voices layered over the wind until the storm sounded like a human breath. "Come back! Come back!" The lake surged forward, swallowing the doorframe. I stumbled back, hitting the desk. The typewriter fell to the floor with a clang, keys sticking. Letters began typing on their own. Slow, uneven. ITDOESNT DRO OWNITWAITS. The keys kept striking long after the ribbon ran out. The paper shredded under the pressure. I screamed over it, over everything, shouting words that didn't even make sense anymore. Names, coordinates, prayers, curses. But my voice didn't sound like mine. It echoed, lagging half a second behind me, like someone repeating every word underwater. And then, between one breath and the next, silence again. No storm, no wind, no light, only a still, hollow calm. I was standing on the dock, the water around me flat as glass. The cabin was gone. I looked down. Beneath the surface I saw the same faces, perfectly still. One of them looked like Donnelly. Another looked like me. I whispered, "What are you?" The reflection answered, "We are what you leave behind." It reached up, hand breaking the surface, cold fingers brushing my wrist. I didn't pull away. The lake pulled instead. The dock sank slowly beneath me, inch by inch, the boards dissolving into the water. When it reached my knees, I heard my voice again from the depths. Station 12, reporting calm waters. The repetition grew louder, then another voice joined it, and another, until it became a choir. Station waits. Come back. The surface broke in ripples, dozens of pale hands reaching upward. They weren't dragging me down, they were welcoming me. And through all of it, one thought repeated in my head, clear and calm. Not real. Real. Not real. I opened my mouth to scream, and the lake filled it first. Then immediate silence. Faint hum under breath. I don't remember coming back up. I don't remember coming back up. One moment, there was only black water. The next, I was lying on the cabin floor again. The air was still. Everything dry. Everything exactly as it had been before. Almost. The lamp glowed steady. The radio sat quiet. The logbook lay open beside me. For a while I couldn't move. My hands shook so hard I could barely hold the pen, but I had to write, had to leave proof. Storm ended. Structural damage minimal. Possible hypothermic episode. Visual hallucinations likely. Even as I wrote it, I knew it was a lie. There were footprints leading across the floor, wet, bare, and not mine. They led to the window, stopped, and vanished into nothing. I whispered to myself, "You're alive. You're still here." But the cabin didn't feel like mine anymore. It hummed quietly, like it was breathing with me. The reflection in the window moved slower than it should. When I raised my hand, it hesitated before following, and when it finally did, its smile didn't match mine. It doesn't drown. The voice came from the reflection, but my mouth moved with it. It waits. I backed away until my shoulders hit the wall, but the reflection stayed close, like a shadow that didn't understand distance anymore. "You understand now, don't you?" it said. I shook my head. "No." "You came back." The voice wasn't angry. It sounded patient, tired, like it had said these words 1,000 times before. "We all came back." The floorboards groaned, the same rhythm as before, a slow, wet pulse like a heartbeat buried deep beneath wood and stone. "You think you escaped," the reflection said. "You never did." I screamed, grabbed the chair, threw it at the glass. The window shattered outward, but instead of shards, there was only water, black, silent, spilling into the room without sound. It didn't splash. It crawled, up the walls, across the ceiling, down again. Everywhere the water touched, images shimmered, moments replaying like film projected through fog. Donnelly standing on the dock, the figures in the lake, myself walking into the trees, all looping, all repeating. "You were always going to come here," the voice said. "You were always going to hear it." I staggered to the desk, grabbed the radio, twisting dials that no longer existed. Static answered anyway. "Station 12, reporting calm waters." Then my voice again, familiar, resigned. "It remembers." The reflection stepped through the window like water takes shape. I couldn't move. Its eyes were my eyes, but deeper, like looking into a lake that never ends. It reached for me, slow, gentle. "We are memory," it whispered. "Every sound the lake has swallowed. Every voice that said no," I whispered back. "I don't want to be part of it." "You already are." The reflection's hand pressed against my chest. Cold, soft, endless. My heartbeat slowed, matched the rhythm in the floorboards. The walls rippled like a reflection on disturbed water. The ceiling disappeared. Stars moved above me, except they weren't stars. They were lanterns, dozens of them, flickering beneath the surface of the lake that now surrounded everything. The voices rose again, layered and echoing. "Not real. Real. Not real. It doesn't drown. It waits." They sounded sad now, almost loving. I looked down. My hands were transparent. The water flowed through me like I wasn't solid anymore. I felt no fear, only quiet. I stepped forward into the water, expecting to sink. But I didn't. I floated, weightless, silent. And below me, I saw them all. The faces, the rangers, the reflections. Each one smiling, each one whispering the same truth. "You were never watching the lake, Eli. The lake was watching you." I don't know how long I drifted there, seconds or centuries. Time wasn't real anymore. Then I heard one final sound, a new voice, calm, uncertain. "Station 12, this is Ranger Collins reporting for winter rotation." The lake shimmered, the reflection stirred, and I smiled, because I finally understood. It doesn't drown. It waits. And now, it's his turn. Would stop on. It is hard to say when quiet becomes a presence. Some nights it's only the absence of sound. Other nights the quiet presses back, like a palm against the glass, testing for heat. This was that kind of quiet. Full, watching, patient. It was early spring when Collins arrived. The road to Station 12 had only just let go of the ice. The ruts were full of gray melt and the smell of thawed earth. He parked beneath the pines and cut the engine. The tick of cooling metal sounded too loud in the cold air. He stood there a while, hat in his hands, eyes on the water. The lake lay long and flat, a slate coin under low cloud. "Looks calm," he said softly, "because that's what people say to make big things smaller." The station welcomed him with that first step inside, the way old buildings do, with a rush of stale warmth and a soft settling in the rafters like an animal exhaling. The place was intact, swept. Tools hung in neat rows above the workbench. The kettle sat clean on the stove. Not abandoned, not exactly lived in. Maintained. On the desk, the logbook. He flipped it open. The last entry bore a steady hand, neat letters, unsmudged ink. Station 12 operational, weather calm. The lake is watching. Signed, E. Turner. Collins frowned. He thumbed back a few pages, then forward again, looking for a context that never arrived. He had read the winter reports. He knew the official story. Staffing disruption during the late season, a search for a ranger named Donnelly, a winter closure that came faster than expected. He did not know an Eli Turner. He wrote under the last line, March 14th, arrival 1400 hours, weather clear, ice shelf retreating along North Bay. Station appears, cared for. He paused, pen lingering over the word he didn't want to write. Feels watched. He set the pen down, then crossed it out. He wasn't superstitious. He wasn't nervous. He was tired, that was all. The road had a way of peeling something off you when you drove it alone. The wind breathed against the window. The radio blinked. Statish visual, eyes narrowing. The unit was older than he was. Tired dials, a mouth of an old speaker, a cord that should have been unplugged. He hadn't powered the generator yet, and yet. Station 12, reporting calm waters. The voice was soft, even, unhurried, like it had nowhere else to be. Collins felt the hair lift at the back of his neck. He reached for the mic slowly, as if it might bite. This is Ranger Collins. Who's transmitting? The speaker answered with a whisper of static. Then, morning patrol complete. Visibility clear. The line sounded as if it had been recorded in a room full of water. Identify, Collins said. Name and position. Silence. Then the voice again, steady as a heartbeat. No wildlife sighted. The lake is calm. He clicked the mic off. The light on the radio dimmed on its own as if embarrassed to be caught. He waited for the feeling to pass, the sense of being addressed by a stranger in a language he technically knew but did not speak. He made tea. He swept the floor. He checked the fuel. Life accumulated in small noises. By dusk, the lake vanished into mist. The world ended 6 yards from the window, and beyond that, who knew? He ate a simple meal and listened without listening to the building's small negotiations. A soft pop in the wall, a sigh in the stovepipe, a thread of dust catching the lamp's breath. Sometime after midnight, the first knock came. 3 slow taps. Collins raised his head, went very still. The lamp flame leaned toward the sound, a small orange ear. He set his cup down. The tea didn't ripple. He crossed the floor in a slow line, boots quiet on old wood, and lifted the lantern to the window. Nothing but his own face, softened by frost. Behind him, the radio sighed. The tender hiss. Don't answer. He turned so fast he nearly dropped the lamp. Who's on this frequency? He demanded, voice too loud in the little room. Silence. He went back to the desk and opened the logbook. His hands were steady because he made them steady. He wrote, 0047. Noise at south window. 3 knocks. Possible thermal contraction. 0049. Radio interference. Unidentified voice. He waited. The silence took a step closer. At 2:47 a.m., the station breathed in. Then the faintest drip. The sound came as a question. A drop landing somewhere beneath the floor, answered by a second, and a third. Not rhythm, not random. A slowing metronome with intention. Collins stood. He pressed his palm to the floorboards. Cold, damp. He whispered because somehow whispering felt respectful. Not real. And when the quiet didn't push back, he added lower, real. Then, as if balancing a scale he couldn't see, not real. He lay awake until dawn. The days gathered in cautious stacks, each one nearly like the last, but each tilted a fraction further toward something that refused to name itself. Collins did his rounds. He noted the retreat of ice. He checked the mooring lines, though no boats would come for weeks. He walked the tree line and counted the birds that did not return. He also began to notice the small wrongnesses that, taken together, felt like a design. His reflection lagged. When he raised a hand, the man in the glass considered, then followed. Footprints appeared where he had not walked. Bare feet, small enough to be not his, and too large to be anything else. The smell of rain lived in the walls. Not the bright mineral clean of spring storms. This was old water. Stone water. The first water. The kind that remembers. In the logbook, he wrote what he could stand to admit. Mornings extremely quiet. Wind inconsistent with forecast. Light feels heavy. And then, without meaning to, a line in smaller letters he almost didn't see. He's here. He did not remember writing it. He touched the fresh ink with a fingertip. It came away cold and clean. That night, the radio offered him a voice he did not know he'd missed until it arrived. "Ranger Collins," it said, the consonants slow like riverstones. "You hear me?" He lifted the mic, breath steady. "Copy." "It doesn't drown," the voice said, not to him exactly, but to the room, to the wood, to whatever listened through the grain. The lamp flame drew down as if bowing. "Who are you?" Collins asked, softer. "If this is a recording, we can catalog it. If this is a distress call." "It waits," the voice said gently. "Always. Just outside the word you're about to say." He didn't move for a long time. When he did, it was only to write, "Recorded transmission, phrase repeated. It doesn't drown. It waits." Voice demonstrates layered timbre, possible artifacting. Emotional content unclear. Calm. 2 days later, Collins walked to the dock. Why not cold? The lake shifted under a light that didn't belong to any hour on his watchful. Sometimes a place slips the leash of time. He had known that in deserts and in hospitals, and once as a child, in a hallway where a clock forgot what to do with minutes. He knelt and extended a hand over the water. The surface was less an answer than a suggestion, the line between lake and air a blur, like someone had rubbed it with a thumb. He did not touch the water. He did not need to. The water moved toward his hand, reaching back without breaking itself. He said, because he couldn't hold the question any longer, "What are you?" The answer rose from somewhere below the grammar of speaking. "We are what arrives when you are done naming." Collins laughed once, a small, accidental sound. "No, not helpful." "Names are coats," the voice said, not through the radio now, but through the boards, the air, the space between heartbeat and idea. "We are weather." He stood, suddenly aware of the fragile geometry of his bones. Some places make you notice the scaffolding. The dock creaked once, a note like an old piano key pressed and released. He felt the gaze of a horizon he could not see. He felt the urge to catalog, to sequence, to pin to a page. Temperature, pressure, bearing. He felt the futility of it like a gentle hand. Eli Turner. he said quietly to the water. "Is that you?" The lake offered him an answer by way of reflection. The surface let go of the sky long enough to consider a face. A man, older than the logbook letters, eyes patient in the way that grief is patient. "Here," the reflection said without moving its mouth. And then, as if remembering the courtesy of words, "Home." Collins stepped back. Something inside him arranged itself around this, the way a room arranges itself when a piano arrives. Everything not quite where it was, everything secretly better for it. "Why me?" he asked, but he didn't expect the truth. The truth is rarely a sentence. "Because you came," the voice said. "Because you listened." "And if I leave?" Silence. Then, "You will carry." He thought of roads. He thought of engines ticking cool. He thought of summer wood smoke and a shirt he could not bear to wash because it sounded like a friend who had gone away. He wrote later, back at the desk, "The lake is not empty. The lake is not hungry. The lake is attentive. The word I want is not a word I have." He did not sleep. On the fifth night, the station remembered how to be a boat. Recently, these water found seams without looking. It rose in exhalations through the floorboards, not pooling but arriving. The lamplight bent. The corners of the room lengthened like corridors you dream about later as if you had walked them. Collins stood in the middle of the room and held his hands away from his sides like a man about to be measured for a coat he wouldn't wear. He said, almost conversationally, "All right." The radio obliged. "Station 12, it said, in a voice that was not a voice but the memory of one pressed into a machine until it took. "Reporting calm waters." The echo arrived a heartbeat later, slightly misaligned, warmer. "Calm waters," said a second voice. "Collins, can you hear me?" He closed his eyes. "Yes." "Good," said Eli Turner, as if discipline pleased him. "Then write this down. Not for you, for whoever comes next." Collins waited. The words came like weather fronts. "Tell them the lake is the true record. Tell them voices are only convenient imitations. Tell them the human mind is a shoreline. It is not a fault to be moved by water." Collins wrote quickly, then slower, then not at all, because the lamp dimmed and the letters began to float on the page. "Tell them," the voice said more gently, "that fear is a door and that listening is a window. Tell them not to mistake the kindness of an echo for permission to stay." "What happens if I stay?" Collins asked. He knew the answer. He asked anyway. The station leaned as if recalling how to rock. "You will become weather with the rest of us," Turner said. "You will wait. You will watch. You will speak when someone asks the right question in the wrong place." Collins thought of his first day, how the logbook had felt warmer than paper. He thought of the repeated line, "It doesn't drown, it waits," and how that had sounded like a threat until now, when it sounded like patience. Outside, lightning happened without light. The lake breathed in. The lake breathed out. "Eli," Collins said, voice very soft, because names are coats, and he was suddenly shy. "Are you?" "I am as much am as anything you will meet," Turner said. If smiles had weights, His would have nudged the needle. Don't be afraid of the grammar. Collins laughed again, a smaller sound. Then he cried a little and wasn't embarrassed by it because the station had the manners to look away. He wrote, finally, "I think he is kind." Morning did what it could. The sky tried a new color, a subtle silver that made the pines look like actors who had aged between acts. Collins boiled water. He ate a crust of bread that tasted like childhood and metal. He walked to the dock because habit is a bridge you keep crossing even when the river changes its name. The lake offered him a surface as calm as paper. Beneath it, the slow grammar of motion. Loops, remembers, waits. He saw faces without seeing faces and refused to be frightened by it. There are worse forms of recognition. He crouched and touched the water with his fingertips. This time it was cold, spring cold, honest cold. A relief, somehow, that something could be exactly what it was. Station 12, Collins said to the horizon, because the world likes ceremony. Reporting calm waters. His voice went out like a stone dropped lightly from a hand. He did not listen for its return. He stood, turned, and found the window at the end of the dock that should not have been there. Not a window set in a frame, just a square of air that had learned how to hold an image. The station, seen from outside. A man, him, moving behind glass, and beside him, another man whose outline trembled like heat. They both lifted their hands. There was a beat, a hiccup in the film, and the second hand completed the gesture a fraction late. "Not real," Collins said, smiling the way you smile at a child who has told you it is a comet. "Real," he added, because the child is also right. "Not real," he finished, because the truth can rest in more than one chair. The window of air wrinkled, then cleared. The image leaned forward as if to whisper. Collins leaned too. The world held its breath. "If you're hearing this," said Turner's voice from a radio that wasn't there, "don't come looking." Collins nodded. "It's too late." "It always is," Turner said, and though the words might have sounded cruel, they did not arrive that way. They arrived like a blanket on a sleeping dog. The dock shuddered. A tiny, polite thing. Collins turned toward shore. On the path back to the station, he saw boot prints. His size. His tread. They went both directions at once. He followed the set that led toward the door. Because you do. That afternoon, a breeze learned how to move again. It threaded the trees with needles of sound. The kettle sang a little off-key. Collins wrote for an hour, then 2. He did not notice when the words began to arrange themselves in a hand not entirely his. He stopped. He listened. The station breathed in. The station breathed out. The radio obliged. Station 12, reporting calm waters. Collins wrote it down anyway. You write weather, even when it repeats. He set the pen aside and closed the logbook. For a long time he watched his reflection in the darkened window. When he raised his right hand, the man in the glass raised his left. He found the thread of humor again because you must. "Left-handed," he said. "Noted." The reflection smiled and did not correct him. It was not that kind of conversation. Outside, evening arrived the way a hand settles onto a shoulder. Not grabbed, placed. The first knock of the night came gentle. Nighter, like fingertips. Collins stood and left the lamp burning. He walked to the window and did not bring the flashlight. He brought himself, and the small authority of a man watching his own house. Behind the glass, a face he recognized. Eli Turner. Tired, patient, the kind of tired that wears well. Turner breathed and the glass fogged. Words appeared in a warm oval, 3 short lines. Not real, real, not real. Collins leaned his forehead to the pane, and his breath made a 4th line between the others like a bridge whose architect had a sense of humor. Keep watch. Turner nodded once. It was not instruction. It was permission. Later, when the station slept as much as buildings sleep, Collins woke to the particular silence you wake to when a place is waiting for you to decide. He went to the desk and turned the typewriter around so it faced the door. He fed it a sheet of paper. He rolled the knob until the margin felt like a horizon. He did not touch the keys. A test tap, then pause. The keys lowered themselves. I, T, D, O, E, S, N, T, Drowen, Twites. Then, slower, as if consulting a dictionary kept underwater. Way, to. Collins closed his eyes, and in the dark behind his lids, the letters drifted and found each other like minnows. He said softly, to whatever had the courtesy to listen, I understand. You will, Turner said, from a speaker that had become a piece of furniture in a room that would someday be a story. Collins sat with the paper until the lines lost their edges. He turned the lamp low. Outside, the lake remembered how to be glass. Chapter 12. It might have been minutes, or a winter, or the length of a long exhale. Time loosened its belt and sat down with them. No one asked it to leave. When the last entry for the season wrote itself, Collins only signed his name. Station 12. Weather calm. The lake is watching. R. Collins. Under it, in letters neat and unhurried, a second signature appeared as if out of a teacher's patient hand. E. Turner. Collins did not look surprised. Some acknowledgments don't require eyebrows. He blew the lamp out. A warm, enormous silence. The radio waited. The lake waited. The station waited with them. And then, because endings are a courtesy you extend even to stories that refuse them, the tape that isn't a tape but behaves like one offered its last gifts. Slight louder. Pager's a page, then if you're hearing this, it already knows you. Close to the mic. You don't believe me, do you? Straight widens, then thins. Silence, long enough to count without numbers. The lake did not answer. It didn't have to. The quiet held, full, watching, patient. Then the smallest sound remained behind all sounds, like breath in a conch shell, like the memory of a radio in another room. Station 12, said the voice that has always been here, reporting calm waters.